All right, so Paul, the first thing, I don't know if they vetted you or not, but we have to know, are you alive and social? Otherwise, you can't be on the network.
Am I ever alive? And I'm extremely social. I was on, actually on Friday, I was like, it was an all-women's day for me. I went on Outnumbered on Fox News live for an hour with the 4 women that sit on the couch. So I was very alive there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then 2 hours later, I was on the Meredith Vieira show, again, surrounded by 3 women. So I was extremely social, so social that I got arrested. But, I do what I have to do.
Hey, now, what's it like going on that Fox show? I don't know what your political what your leanings are, but what's it like doing that Fox show?
It's kind of like stepping into a blender and then someone pouring alcohol all over your cup. That's pretty much what it's like. No, it's I tend to kind of go with the issue. Maybe a little bit more left-leaning than right. So I just go on and like to kind of spar and have a good time. And so sometimes it's a little frustrating because everybody's so locked into like their script of like, Obama's bad and liberals are dumb and whatever, blah blah blah. And so it sort of gets like a little bit like you just want to shake people a little bit. So that's why it's fun to go on to kind of be that person that's kind of the X factor that sort of kind of just shakes it up. Like, for example, I was on a panel once on one of the shows on Fox. I go on different ones. I go on Hannity and Red Eye a lot. And I was on a panel on one of the shows, and Obama had said the Constitution's a flawed document, which it is. It was written to be that way. It was amended 27 times. I might give you a hint that it was, a flawed document. And everybody's on the panel like, oh, this is outrageous. Obama should be impeached. No president should talk about the Constitution of the United States like that. And one of the guys saying that was a black guy, a black Republican. So I said on the air, you of all people can't say it wasn't a flawed document. Up until a couple hundred years ago, you were treated as a person. You were a torso sitting here.
Yeah.
And he looked at me like, what? Like, so that's kind of where I feel like my role is to kind of bring a little common sense to it all.
Yeah.
And do it with no pants. I do it with no pants, and they like that.
Will you be doing your podcast with no pants?
Listen, I frequently do it with no pants and oil down. A lot of oil.
Wow.
Oil, but fine. Yeah.
Let me soak in that visual a moment. Oh, okay. All right. Got it. Go on.
I like the oil and I like to use feathers. That's my thing.
Wow. Before we talk about your podcast, then I'm curious to hear you describe what you're going to do with your podcast. But Jon Stewart, you were working for that guy for a while. Are you surprised that he's stepping down?
Jon Stewart, I've never heard of him. Is he in the news?
Daily.
No, a little bit. I'm more surprised at the timing of it than that he's stepping down. He's been doing it a long time, and that show is very demanding. It's a high production show in terms of like there's a lot of footage and steel pieces, and he's at the head of it. Like he's not just reading prompter. He's the voice of the show and is involved in meetings and writing sessions. He's very involved and very hands-on. So 15, 16 years of that, it burns you out, and plus he has a huge cocaine problem. I don't know if a lot of people know that. So he just needed to. No, he's actually running off to start a new life with Bruce Jenner. And I wanted to be the first one to reveal this on your podcast. So you broke news, Rusty.
Nice.
What I'm saying.
Bruce and John. Wow. Who wears the pants of that family? Anyway.
I can't hear you. You got to speak up.
All right. For the folks who don't know, describe your tenure at the Daily Show. What did you do? And you've been awarded for your work there?
I began as a writer there, and for a number of years, and also sort of on air with on some occasion. And I do the audience warm up there now, and have done for quite a while. And so that's my involvement. So. We were surprised more at the timing. I think some of us thought, well, maybe he stays an extra year through the 2016 presidential election.
Yeah.
And kind of just that's sort of a natural end, right? It's the end of a presidential cycle. It's the end of a year going into a new year. But I think he just felt like this was the time, from what I understand, pretty much what he said on the air on that show a couple of nights early last week, rather, is kind of the what it is. I just think he just needs to move on and take a break and, that kind of thing.
And what do you do when you warm up an audience for the Daily Show? What do you tell them?
I do a fan dance, and then I have a hula hoop.
Cool.
And then oils. I use a lot of oils. That's pretty much a big part of my life. Your job is like kind of in that role. It's sort of threefold. You got to get them to understand what you need them to do. We do a thing called live tape, which most shows do, and unlike sitcoms where they tend to sweeten the shows with audience laugh tracks later, shows like ours or any late night talk shows don't do that. It's pretty much what happens in that studio is the show. So in the case of the Daily Show, they got to be the laugh track, and if they don't laugh, the people at home don't think the jokes are funny. So I have to get them to understand that, get them to be super energized in a big space that can swallow up their sound, and get them laughing like they're at a comedy club, all in about 10 to 12 minutes.
Wow.
So I just talk to the audience. I don't do stand-up. The stand-up jokes in a studio don't work. There's too much going on, and it's too bright and big. So I just riff and talk to the audience and play with them and have fun. And then John comes out and does his thing and does a Q&A, and then we start the show. And then it's back upstairs for drinks and drugs. That's pretty much it.
and who's your guest? Who would you predict would take over for John at this point? Any names being kicked around?
Say again.
Who do you think? Who do you think will take over for Jon Stewart?
Oh, I'm thinking Brian Williams. I think he's got time on his hands right now. And that kind of a job, you can embellish all you want. Yes, I met the abominable snowman. I cured cancer. You can pretty much say what you want. Now, I don't know. Here's the thing is going back to what I said about John, that he's just not an on-camera guy, just reading prompts. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a great skill set and important. But he's also sort of the editorial voice of the show. So using two people, really, right? And that second one can be hard to replace because, you need somebody who's up on the news, smart, and really funny, and has a point of view, and can make it clear what he wants to say and how he wants to say it. And so I don't know necessarily to be a comedian. My gut is there might be an outside-the-box choice that people don't expect. It could be, all joking aside about Brian Williams, not him, but somebody from journalism who can cross over and have a point of view about the news.
Yeah.
I know some people say it should be a woman because there are no women in late night, so maybe that. But even still, I think it's got to be somebody that can help drive the ship, editorially behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so I nominate myself.
There you go.
And I need a sidekick, and his name is Rusty.
Nice.
You're in. Pack your bag.
I think like Brian Williams, that idea will be shot down. Hey-o. Describe your podcast. Describe your show, your podcast for the Alive and Social.
My show. I want to quote just one reviewer, the most brilliant podcast ever, Paul Mecurio's mom.
Nice.
Now, it's my mom, I understand, but she is not at all objective. She's been very hard on me. So my podcast is just a cry for help, really. Sean Bernard, a good friend, will tell you that he found me in the gutter. And he said, you know what? You need a podcast. And I said, but I just peed my pants, and I'm in my 40s.
Perfect.
And he said, well, a podcast would change all that. It helped Rusty. And I said, how so? Well, Rusty was a loner. He would travel from town to town, killing people and leaving them on the side of the road. And then I turned them around with a podcast. I'm like, all right, got me sold. Because if Rusty could turn his life around, anybody can.
That's right.
I don't know. I'm losing my mind. No, what it is it's I resisted, frankly, a podcast as a comedian a little bit initially because there are a lot of comedians with podcasts. But I do like to talk to people. It's something I do in my act. Part of it comes from, and this is all serious for a minute, I grew up in Rhode Island, and my parents had a furniture store, and my mother had me selling furniture at like 12 and 13 years old to gray-haired ladies. And so I just kind of have a bit of a gift for gab. And I always liked long-form talk. I can remember listening to David Susskind and watching the David Susskind show. You may know him. And Larry King when he was on Westwood One. And
yep.
Charlie Rose Have It Smiling Now. And other than those long forms, there's not something out there that's cool and interesting for like a younger generation that's kind of hip and funny. And so I just decided to talk to people that I want to talk with about things that I want to talk with them about, and like do it in a fun, interesting way. And I have a lot of curiosity, so they tend to be longer form, as most podcasts are. But I'm really proud, not just the caliber of the guests I've had, but the variety of walks of life that they come from. Paul McCartney, Jay Leno, Stephen Colbert, just Thomas Friedman of the New York Times, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Kristen Chenoweth, the host of the Mythbusters. So it's just something I'm really passionate about, and I think everybody's got a really interesting story, and that's kind of what I'm doing with my podcast. You know, it's just putting names out there that people know but may not know about them, but also names that they don't know who are like compelling and interesting that I think they should know about. And so that's kind of what was the motivation. And it's really been a great outlet, like a really just a different muscle to exercise creatively, you know.
And I enjoyed listening to those interviews, especially because I'm a Beatle fan. Dude, Paul McCartney, hello.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, he kept asking to be on, and I said, look, I don't have room for you.
It's sad.
No, it was crazy what happened. He was at the Colbert Report doing a special taping, and I also worked on that show, Stephen Colbert, friends, and worked to get on the Daily Show together. And I'm walking through the hallway, and, you know, Paul McCartney, we start talking, just chit-chatting, you know, and on the outside, I'm all smooth and whatever and hip, and on the inside, I'm like, oh, my God, I'm talking to Paul McCartney. Like, I was like a 16-year-old girl, and I was getting really close to his face because he looked amazing. I was, like, getting, like you know those chimps on the National Geographic, they like clean ticks off their mates? Like, I was that close to him, right?
God.
And then I go, hey, he goes, what are you doing? I go, this, that, and he goes, I got a podcast. He goes, yeah. He goes, that's cool. He goes, I've heard a lot of good things. So I go, yeah, you should come on my podcast. He goes, yeah, sure. I was like,
nice.
And then I was like, okay, great. And then we exchanged phone numbers because he said it would be better to arrange it directly. And
crazy.
And then an hour later, my phone rang, and I didn't recognize the number, and I let it ring a voicemail, and it was Paul McCartney saying, I'm ready to do the podcast.
What a dick. You put him, you didn't even pick up for Paul.
And then he was great. And again, like, I didn't want to make it a sensational interview about, hey, did you hate John? So I'm very fascinated by process, no matter what somebody does. Plumber, a musician, a talk show host, whatever. Nobody knows what Sean Bernard does, but that's a whole other story for another day.
Yeah,
but
no kidding.
So I just talked to him about, like, you know, one of the first questions I asked him was, like, you know, as a performer, as a stand-up, you kind of have an act, and you know kind of what resonates with your fans, and you want to keep feeding the beast and giving your fans what you want. And I said to him, where did you guys, at such a young age, as the Beatles, when you were at the height of your power and popularity, to have the guts to change your sound so dramatically from album to album and not worry about losing your fans, right? Like, they like a certain sound, they want the same thing. And he goes, well, we didn't think like that. It was about the art and whatever. And so, you know, he said, we just made our stuff that we wanted to make, and they came along with us. And so we talked about process and going from the Beatles to Wings and what that was like for him to be the true front man, the solo guy, essentially. He said it was scary. He talked about traveling with the Beatles, and
yeah, that's awesome.
When they were young, and someone broke into their van, and they were sleeping in a van. They had no money, and they had to do like what we called a Beatles sandwich. It was really cool. It was like a nice insight into sort of what it was like and what it is like to be a musician. So that's kind of what I try to do. I try to ask at least one or two questions that maybe nobody's asked before. That's always my goal.
And Sir Paul had no problem that you were oiled up and covered in feathers. So that's also very cool.
No, it was weird. We did a little fan dance together.
Nice.
He had sparkles all over his face.
Cool.
And, yeah.
Well, Paul,
he was great.
They're about to go do a live show right now, so I gotta wrap it up. But I just wanted to welcome you to the Alive and Social Network, and we'll look forward to more Paul McCartney interviews. Get him on the phone again.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that what you call going to the bar in the afternoon? Your live show? Okay, I get it. I see what you do there.
Hey-o.
I know how you roll.
Hey-o. All right, thanks, man. Nice chatting with you.
Hey, thank you, man. A lot of fun. It's fun to be part of the new network here. I'm very excited.
All right, thanks, man.